name is Jerm. This is Jerm Warfare, the battle of ideas.
I've been waiting a long time to say this. Neil Oliver, thank you for joining me in the trenches.
Oh, I'm delighted. Yes, the longer this attritional war goes on, it's been 6 years for me now, but I generally jump on every opportunity to talk. Whenever someone makes contact with me and wants a conversation, I'm more than happy to be the other half of it.
I've been struggling, though, for years to get you on. I'm not quite sure why. It might just be the fact that I've had the wrong contact details all along.
Yeah, I don't. I obviously just recently there I did another conversation with James Dellingpole on the.
He's a friend of mine.
Yeah, me too. You know, so we've got that mutual connection, and then he subsequently said that you were looking to connect with me. So really, that was the first time I became aware that you wanted to make contact with me. So I just said yes. And then you said that we also had another mutual friend in common. That's Nick Hudson, your fellow South African. Yeah, I've been talking to Nick now for years, ever since goodness knows, through his pan data. All these your researches and study of what was going on during the COVID debacle. So I've known Nick for years. So by what means we've managed to not make contact is mysterious.
It is. But now listen, so because this is your first time on my show, I know you've been on UK Column before, and this obviously is for UK Column, or haven't you? I think you have.
I couldn't deny it. But obviously, like you, I've been a guest on so many different platforms. I don't remember them all, but I may well have done. I'm certainly very aware of UK Column. Whether or not I've actually been interviewed or taken, but I couldn't say either way.
Well, because this is your first time then on my show, I just want to go through a little bit of your background, just because it's so interesting. You're actually an archaeologist. How cool is that?
1,000 years ago, really. I left school in the 80s and I went to Glasgow University and I studied for a degree in archaeology. It just appealed to me. I was always interested in things, historical and so on, and archaeology seemed like a really good, slightly different avenue to go down. And I worked then. I got my degree and I worked as a digger. For a few years I excavated numerous sites, and then I stopped. I found that I couldn't make any money. Basically, it was a fascinating subject, but it was very difficult to make a living. So I retrained then at that point. I suppose I was probably in my early mid-20s. I retrained as a journalist. I joined a local newspaper in the southwest of Scotland where I grew up. And I qualified again. I did a 3-year indenture with them, and they trained me up, and I got shorthand and typing and all of this stuff of a cub reporter. And then I went off in a slightly different direction. But over the years, archaeology and history came back in, and by the end of the millennium, around 99, 2000, I stumbled into television. And the television that I ended up making for quite a long time was about history and archaeology. So I kind of, I took a detour and then ended up back in the same place.
When it comes to archaeology, I've come to the conclusion that most of what we understand about history is just wrong.
You go straight into the number one rabbit hole there for me. Yeah, I was like you. 2020 was definitely the turning point year for me. By which point, let's say, where are we now? I was 53, I suppose, in 2020. So I'd been around the houses, as we say, and I thought I knew stuff, and I had always been interested in history and archaeology, but I depended on what I had been taught. I went to a state school in Scotland, just a regular school, and then I went to university and I listened to what I was told, and I, qualified and passed exams in that. By now, 6 years into this new perspective, I've begun to rethink everything. Absolutely. I'll be honest, I'm not making this up. I was always open to what might have been called, I suppose, alternative interpretations of history. To pass your exams and get the degree and whatever, you follow a line. You keep in your lane, broadly speaking. But I was always interested in the sort of Erich von Däniken and, more recently, obviously, the thinking and writing of people like Graham Hancock. I've never really been a dyed-in-the-wool academic. I went to uni like, millions of my cohort from school, but I didn't then go on to do higher degrees and any of that. And that meant that I was less likely, I suppose, to remain railroaded and only listening to other academics. Because I went out into the world of journalism, or just out into the world in general, I was listening to and I was watching stuff on television and I was reading other books. So I was always aware of alternative interpretations. Now that's a long way around. I've taken a bit of a detour again there, but by now, I think that the really what bothers me more than anything else is the timeline. There's an accepted orthodox timeline. You're born of, everything, geology, radiocarbon dating, thermoluminescence dating, dendrochronology, which is, tree ring dating. There's an established, in inverted commas, timeline. This happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And it all happened within this period of time, whatever. By now, I don't just accept that timeline. That's my main problem. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. So by now, because I've been, I now proudly wear the hat of, the tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist thing. I've long since...
Hi.
Yeah, pleased to meet you. I've long since shrugged off any concern. In fact, I feel if you're not tarred with that brush, then you're not trying hard enough. And so now that I've relaxed into that persona, I don't care who knows, and I don't care about other people's opinion of what I think, or at least what I'm open to considering. So a whole new wide vista has opened up for me in the last 6 years, and I've done some fascinating reading and listening.
The COVID era was a disaster for the world in many ways. I mean, people were locked down, and it was just an absolute catastrophe. But knowing what you know now, Neil, would you go back to 2019?
No. Hard no. It was difficult. It was like a slap in the face or a punch in the face, being initially labelled as whatever, anti this, anti that, anti-vaxxer, COVID denier, granny killer was the start of it. But then that developed as I looked at other things into whatever, conspiracy theorist, anti-Semite, whatever. I've been called it. You name it, I've been called it. And it hurt to begin with, but then I always used the analogy of, the fear of the first punch in the face is worse than the first punch in the face. Once you get the punch in the face, oh, right, that's what it's like to get a punch in the face. And the subsequent blows still hurt, but they don't take you by surprise in the way that the first punch in the face did. And so I don't... I've also used the analogy of shedding a shell like a crab. And you go through that, presumably a crab goes through that period where it's defenceless because it's soft again. But then you grow a different shell, a bigger shell that lets you be bigger, and so on and so on. And that's the process. You want to keep growing. So I think that's where I've been. It was a shock to me. Heaven help me, I was a kind of a member of the lesser establishment here in the UK. Because I was presenting the kind of television I was, which was soft, kind of BBC documentary series about the landscape and about history and archaeology and so on. Charities and others approach you and ask you to represent them, to be a face. And I was, I represented a few charities. I was also for a while there the president of the National Trust for Scotland. I had been invited to become, and was very briefly, a fellow of the Royal Society of Edinburgh, which is one of those sort of august societies, for your academic intellectual types. And and I was a known face, and then because of what I started to say around COVID, and then everything else, like the war in Ukraine, like the climate crisis hoax, Gaza, the genocide, and all of the rest of it, merely taking a stance where I was saying, "Are we sure about this?" Really, I mean, I was just really wait a minute, hang on. There seems to be an alternative way of interpreting these events. Could we, maybe we should look at that. So I got so battered by that, and then I was dropped by everyone. All those little accretions that I had gathered around me, I was dropped by every charity. I was dropped as the president of the National Trust for Scotland. I was challenged by the members, the fellows of the Royal Society of Edinburgh to apologise. I can't even remember now what specifically I had said. But anyway, I was asked to recant, and I said, no, I'll just leave. And I left. I think I'm probably the person with the briefest tenure of fellowship of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. It must have been months, literally. And so my agent dropped me. Everyone dropped me. My newspaper column ended. I doubt if I'll ever work for terrestrial television again. And so all of that has happened to me. But you asked the question, do I regret it? 100% hard no, because I'm content that I did right in saying what I said. I wanted to say what I said, and I don't regret saying what I said. So there's and happily, very happily, my wife, we've been together for a long time. We've known each other since we were teenagers. And my wife never missed a beat either. So she was always on the same page, as we say. And my kids, managed to keep our kids away from the jabs. They didn't take any of that. And that, for me, that's achievement number one. The fact that Trudy and I, my wife, became even tighter as a unit, and the fact that we kept our kids away from that bioweapon, if nothing else had happened, I would still be content that I did right.
I also wouldn't go back to 2019. My child was born sort of post-COVID, and we struggled for a long time to fall pregnant. And if it weren't for the COVID era, my child would not be vaccinated. In other words, hang on, have I got that the right way around? My child is not vaccinated. Let me put it like that.
Your child is not, yeah.
Yeah. And he's healthier as a result. Now, if you had asked me in 2019, I would have said, absolutely, he's going to get vaccinated. So I'm very grateful.
Full disclosure. I mean, Trudy and I, our kids are older. I mean, my eldest is 22, soon to be 23, and my youngest is 17, 18, and my middle boy is 20. Back in the day, we got them MMR'd. You get that's the measles, mumps, and rubella.
Yeah, I was also as a kid.
My mum and dad got me and my sisters jabbed with whatever was offered up at the Times back decades ago, and when the MMR thing came along, we did that. We got the kids jabbed, and now mercifully, as far as we can tell, dodged a bullet on that one. I don't know. But if I had my time again with 2020 hindsight, we wouldn't. And Trudy says the same. We would absolutely not let a needle anywhere near them at any point. And but there we go. Here we are. My awakening. I put a lot of it down to just. It wasn't that I was pro jab, really, not really. It was just that I wasn't paying attention, and the MMR was just another thing you did. Here's this date in the calendar, you get your kids jabbed. And that didn't, God forgive me, we went along with the orthodoxy. Everybody around us seemed to be getting the same thing. So we just went along with it. I've done that. And I've said, when people come at me now about, oh, you didn't used to say this and you didn't used to say that. Absolutely, I didn't. I accept that completely. But you only, to use the common parlance, waking up when you're waking up. In this instance, if someone, you can slap and shake someone, whatever, but you can't waken someone else up. The other person has to waken up by themselves. It's not like, the true love's first kiss for Sleeping Beauty and you waking up. You waking up when you're waking up. And I woke up in 2020. And I hold my hand up and say the things I did and what I thought before 2020 was different. I don't apologise for it. It's just where I was. And now I think differently. And, that's it.